without further ado, let's get into the co-main event. We got back-to-back heavyweight fights. And, it's interesting to see Ovince and Preux get these random heavyweight fights, right? We saw him against Big Ben Rothwell earlier in the year, if not the pandemic. And that was the one fight where I was telling myself, it was interesting. Yeah, wow. I said earlier in the year. It was May of last year. But then he actually beat Alonzo Menifield, which I thought was very, very doable because of the one-dimensionalness we've seen from Alonzo. But the Jamal Hill fight, if there was not a fight where, stamp of approval to just move up for good and try your best at, 35 plus, I think that's what makes him exciting as a heavyweight, right? He now brings the athletic caliber to the UFC heavyweight division. He's just escaped a lot more of those, ruthless athletes at the lower weight classes. And, he lost a split to Ben Rothwell, which I think Ben was hella disappointed if you rewatch that fight. I actually had Ben winning that fight, but it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. And that's what made me realize that St. Preux always has the ability to stand in there with the best. I mean, he's got a John Jones fight under his belt, right? Dominic Reyes, decision loss. Like, he's been in there with some of the best guys the UFC has to offer at 205. And now he's taking on a guy like Tanner Boser. Now, Tanner Boser's a Canadian. As much as I want to love him unconditionally, there's parts of it that I just, the Latifi fight, for example, I just felt like there was a lot of him that came out of that just so negative. And I think that for him to be a fighter, to be in the mentality that he's in right now, he seems to be very good at, talking himself out of things, because all in all, he doesn't look like he's in the best place right now, but his media day could not have been more real about the situation. He had to go home after that fight, quarantine, then, FML, back on a plane, coming back to, Vegas for this one. I just feel bad for him. The Latifi fight was an interesting one. I had Latifi winning that one because I figured he would be able to get that fight to the ground at some point or another, and I'm just very skeptical of Tanner Boser's ability to get up off the ground against good wrestlers like that. The big thing with me for him is I thought Arlovsky exploited him quite a bit on the feet in terms of just versatility and timing and footwork. That's where I think at this level now, maybe with an Ovince St. Preux, who doesn't really move like Andre Arlovsky and doesn't have that same versatility, but he's a great athlete. And I think you're going to see two guys who have not the most, expansive arsenal on the feet, but two guys who like to get in there, throw big kicks. Tanner's all about the leg kick, followed about that 1-2, right? Always about the quick strikes and the leg kicks. And I think for him, it's not about being more versatile, but it's about being dominant at that point, right? Get in there close. Don't be afraid of taking shots, because I think for him, the chin has been there from the start. He's already been in there with Gunn, who's now in the main event. Like, he has so much experience under him, and I think being able to take that and turn it into being a confident fighter in the octagon, even against the wrestlers, makes sense. When you watch the Latifi fight, it just seemed like he wasn't doing enough to win that fight. And I actually got into a bit of an argument with a guy on Instagram about that fight because it's MMA. And I'm sorry to say, if you don't think Latifi won that fight, I'm happy to contest that, because it just seemed like Boser wasn't doing enough to win. Whereas even though it was boring and he didn't even do much with the takedowns, he was in the more dominant position and took advantage of any opportunity he got to be the dominant fighter and keep control time. So it's very difficult for me to hear that Tanner didn't deserve to lose that fight, because in the areas where he looked dominant, he wasn't as dominant as Latifi looked in his areas. And so I really want to see him being able to, work in those strikes, get some good leg kicks in. I think that he can slow Ovince St. Preux down, and that's what's key. And Tanner, don't you dare get caught in that Von Flue choke, bro. Don't you dare. No, that does not happen to Tanner Boser. And so, we can quickly look at St. Preux. We just talked about the, Ben Rothwell fight, but before 2016, that loss to John Jones, 13-3 fighter with only losses to Gegard Mousasi, Ryan Bader, and Glover Teixeira. So, in the early parts of his career, the guy looked absolutely phenomenal coming in from Strikeforce, and that's where you're starting to see the very real aspects of the tail end of a career. And I think that's where Tanner Boser is going to hold himself very, very accountable if he were to lose this fight, because he is, at the end of the day, going up against the guy who is on his last legs, moving up to heavyweight probably for good, because he can't take on the athletes at 205, and if he loses to him, it's a tough pill to swallow, I'm sure, for Tanner. So like I said, man, I think that Ovince and Preux is going to bring an athletic vibe, a powerful vibe to this fight, but he's going to look for big head kicks. He does not put combos together very well, but he's going to try to take this to the ground. He's going to try and use the kicks. And if Tanner Boser cannot defend the takedowns from St. Preux, this will be a tough fight for him. But on the feet, he definitely has the advantage. So let's take a quick look at the lines. I think it should be a fairly close fight, in my opinion, but yeah, I mean, Tanner Boser opened as a -135. He definitely deserves to be the favorite. Ovince and Preux is a +115, but now drops. So this fight is now much wider in lines. Tanner Boser now sitting between a -170 to -180 favorite, with Ovince and Preux coming in as a +150 dog. Now, we just talked about the ways that these two guys can win the fight. It's tough to see Tanner at a -170. I just think if I was him, that would even add added pressure to me, because the guy just wants to go in and fight. He doesn't care about anything else. He just wants to go in and fight. And for this line to look like that, it's a bit more of a confidence booster for some. But I think for a guy like Tanner, it's just, utilize the strengths and avoid the weaknesses. And if Ovince and Preux gets that takedown, that -135 line is looking a lot more realistic than that -170 line. So be careful where you put your money. I said it last week with that 5 and 7 week. You gotta be smart with it if that's what you're doing. I just love to break down fights and obviously give you guys some added information on how to, put your money or put your brain or whatever it is you do. It could be a verdict pick'em. It could be a ESPN pick'em. It could be actual betting. It doesn't matter. It's about breaking down the fights and seeing who has the most probability to win.